Lisa Chapman, and I want to welcome you to the August version of our Legislative Action Committee meeting. Nice to see so many friendly faces. Wanted to just remind everyone, if you would please mute yourself so that we can have best sound quality. And then also, we would love to hear from you. We have time at the end, but also if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll get to you at a stopping point in the content. So excited to see everyone. We have lots to cover today, so let's go ahead and get on with it. We have lots of our staff here. Thanks to everyone for helping out with the slides and the links. Ashley, if you wouldn't mind advancing, there we go. So Micah is the host for this Legislative Action Committee, and this is our mission. We endeavor to improve systems and support communities and engage with all of you to reduce homelessness and increase access to affordable housing in a way that leaves no one behind. So we want to be inclusive and effective. Let's go to the next slide, please. So today, along with Eric and I, we have several of our other staff, Ashley Heidenrich and Jamie Tibbetts, who is one of our great interns, talking to you today about different updates and things that are happening. So we're excited about that. Eric will be running through some of federal updates. We'll be talking about some things going on statewide. We have some Micah updates and we love to hear from you. So we make time every month to hear from you. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide and I will kick it over to Eric.
Gee whiz, that was fast. Normally we have another speaker coming in, but I'm jumping right into it. Good morning, everyone. Well, it is 12:02 now. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eric Huffnagel. I'm the CEO of the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. For those of you who haven't met me before, I want to say thank you for being here again. I'm going to be covering some of the work being done at the federal level. It's not as busy and robust as some of the other presentations we've given, but I want to give you some highlights going forward just to keep your finger on the pulse. So why don't we start off with slide 1, which I am not seeing. I need to check myself here and see.
This is the one about the Appropriations Committee.
I'm not seeing any slides, so I'm not sure what exactly happened. There we go. I'm back in the real world. Okay.
All right, good.
Thank you. Sorry about that, folks. Just wanted to report out about the Senate Appropriation Committee releasing and then passing a fiscal year 25 budget that proposes a 10% increase to the THUD funding. This is important because it does increase HUD's funding by 10% from the previous year. So that would be enough to cover the renewals on all existing tenant-based rental assistance or TBR contracts, which is important because that was something that we were concerned about. When even if you have a status quo on funding, you don't have enough money for all your renewals. So that was first and foremost a very significant concern. Bear with me for just a moment. I wanted to just make a comment on that. And why this is important is for those who are not policy geeks or may not remember, there was a Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023 that was put in place by Congress, and that was part of a bargaining tool for an annual budget. And what it did was it allowed for only a 1% increase to the federal budget in 2024 and 2025. So it's kind of that grand bargain that you were able to get a higher increase in 2023 and then saying, oh, we're just going to hold everything at a 1% increase. But the Senate Appropriations Chair, which is Patty Murray, and then also Susan Collins, who's a Republican from Maine, did work together on a bipartisan agreement that will allow a boost in spending above that very restrictive FRA cap. So under the agreement, the non-defense spending would receive an additional $13.5 billion in emergency funding beyond what the Fiscal Responsibility Act allows. So that's kind of a big deal in the sense that that would be inhibiting the ability of the Senate to be able to take this action. So that was the negotiations took place. Very good deal for us. Now, let's go to the next slide. Oops. Let me see if I wanted to cover that first or the next. Okay, well, let's go ahead and talk about this. This is important as well. While we had some good news with respect to the proposed budget for the upcoming year, the Senate failed to approve a bipartisan tax package. That tax package was to address funding for the Low-Income Housing Coalition tax credit, excuse me, Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, but it also included some additional reforms, and some of those reforms were going to be put in place to help incentivize developers to target extremely low-income housing households, and also to be thinking in terms of affordable homes in rural and tribal areas that were not included in some previous legislation or proposed legislation. So it did not pass. It was pretty much on partisan lines, but I think that there's room for this to be revisited because it's very important. But I want to let you know the first go at this was not successful. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. I wanted to just remind everybody that while we did have some success with respect to the Senate, when we talk about the Appropriations Committee negotiating, going above that 1%, and thinking in terms of a 10% increase for the THUD bill, I do want to just remind everybody, I talked about this at the last meeting, that we are living in a world where not everything is consistent, and from one chamber to the other, you have quite a variance. And so I wanted to make sure that you were reminded that, hey, in the House, it's a different world. And there's much more of a division between Republicans and Democrats in the House, as we all know from the last couple of years. And I wanted to just put this out to remind you that the battle is still there for us. Don't get comfortable because the Senate has come through with something that we think is a more realistic number for the budget. There are some key members in the House on the Republican side who were proposing a cut to the HUD budget. So about a 3% cut from the current budget. So be aware, be ready to take some action on this one. So let's not sit back and rest and think that the Senate is going to be coming through and that the House is going to be going along with it easily. Okay, next slide. And in case you missed it, I'm just adding some things here that we haven't in the past. Just wanted to comment on a subcommittee that is a meeting, actually full committee. So it's the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Financial Services that is meeting, has met to talk about artificial intelligence in the financial services and housing sectors. And I wanted to just put this forth because it's something that is quite timely. We've all heard a lot about artificial intelligence over the last few years, more and more so over the last several months. And we need to think in terms of what are some of the potential negative impacts that artificial intelligence can have. And so there was a hearing to talk about it, and there were some issues that were specifically raised about the potential for AI to perpetuate discrimination. I mean, it's already an issue that we are dealing with, but AI can kick that up a notch. So we're talking about the tenant screening selection systems, that there's data that's used that results in biased outcomes. So there certainly are concerns about how these applications could just exacerbate the already troubling discrimination that takes place. So pay attention to this. So we want to make sure we put this out there in front of you. You're going to hear more about it in the future. This is something that's going to impact potentially every sector within housing and financial services. So be aware of it. So in case you missed it, it's on the radar with Congress. We'll send you more information if any action is actually taken as far as legislation to help reduce some of the risks with respect to discrimination or other adverse impacts. Okay, next slide. All right, this is just a section to remind you about how you can get involved. here. Oh, before I do that, I see that Janine Rowe has her hand raised. Janine, do you have a question or comment? I'm not sure when that came in, if it was before the AI or after.
Yes, I just have a quick question. My question is, all these articles and bills are public, correct? That you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. We have some links that we're going to be dropping in the chat so you can read
got 'em.
up on some.
Yep.
Perfect. All righty. Thank you for asking. Okay, so back to the slide of the call to action. So this is just the opportunity for you to know that you can get engaged. A lot of you have been here in the past in other meetings. There's some new faces here. I just want to remind people and make sure that you have information at your fingertips to be able to take some action if you are so inclined. So this is just a reminder. This slide is identifying some key priorities that we've been talking about for a number of months. We want to keep this out in front of you so that you can see what they are, but then also to encourage you to contact your members of Congress. It's never too late to do it, and it's never too frequent to reach out to their offices in different ways to share information about these as priorities. So we encourage you to do that. Next slide, please. All right, again, engaging your members of Congress, just a reminder, you can do that in a number of ways. You can email or call the offices. You can also engage them through social media. And it's important to be thinking about how you can do some storytelling. How are you sharing stories about how people are impacted on the ground in their districts relating to some of the priorities that you're raising to them in your communication? So please keep that in mind. We do have some links here to be able to access information and more easily access your member of Congress, and then also some tools to help you in telling some compelling stories. So resources for you, we'll drop those links in the chat as well. And in the follow-up communication we put out after this meeting, we'll have a collection of all the links. Next slide, please. And here's an example of where you can go to get additional information beyond what we've talked about here. And next slide. All right, so I am done in giving you the quick and dirty update on the federal level. Again, not as much stuff as we've covered in the past, but want to put this out there as a reminder, but also to update you on a few of the new things that had been taking place, and then also encourage you to take action. We need to keep our voices loud and strong. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for the state updates, and I'm not sure who's going to grab the front end of that. Is that you, Lisa?
It is.
All righty.
Thanks, Eric. Go to the next slide, please. So yeah, we have some, still some work to do. We're excited that the source of income legislation, there's 5 bills in the House and the Senate, are very close. We just need one more little thing, that's the Senate to just give an up or down vote. They already voted on the bills, but then it went to the House, so they have to vote again to be concurrent and affirm, you know, the modifications that happened. So we are asking that you contact your state senator, and also Senator Majority Leader Winnie Brinks. We really need you to get to her office and ask that they bring it to the floor for a vote in September. I spoke with one of the sponsors, Senator Bayer, and she said that she really thought that they would do this once they got back in September. There are legislative days on the calendar, but they really haven't been doing much work outside of a few committee meetings because it's an election year. So we really need to put the pressure on them and just say, hey, let's finish the job. Let's get this passed. We're 1 inch from the finish line, but we need all of you, because she said it's really helpful to hear from advocates and hear from people around the state. And that's what Majority Leader Brinks needs to do. So you can contact her staff person. Lauren put the link in the chat, or Bree Egan is the name of her staffer there. Next slide, please. So I'm going to toss it to Jamie, who's going to talk about this one.
Thank you. I see, Janine, do you have a hand raised for a question? Oh, I think you're muted if you're talking.
On my,
Going to Ohio?
no, well, Sawyer's got COVID, so.
Yes, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So those are the state bills for Michigan, is that correct?
Yes. Those were legislation in our state Senate and, yeah, House. Yeah, Eric covered the federal ones and now we're talking about the ones at the state level.
And then are you gonna send those bills over in the, not the bills per se, but the bill numbers and the follow-up so I can let my representatives know?
Yes, we will send that in our follow-up. It was on the slide, but I know it goes too fast and it's hard to capture all of that. So yes, we will send that in the follow-up with the bill numbers. And I can put them in the chat if you want.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you both. So a group of us met last week to talk about the topic of homelessness criminalization. We, being Micah, are preparing a toolkit that talks about the topic, talks about the history, talks about different things that have happened in communities across Michigan. We're looking to hold these meetings every other month, so we will be sending out an invite for the next one in the coming weeks. And we are planning to incorporate some of the great suggestions that we heard from attendees about what would be helpful to their advocacy around this topic. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or would like to share about an experience that has happened in your community. Relatedly, we did discuss a little bit the Supreme Court ruling on the Grants Pass versus Johnson case. We've kind of seen some fallout from that already. Governor Newsom, within the past couple of weeks over in California, signed an executive order urging state and local officials to clear out encampments where people experiencing homelessness are living. There has already been some pushback from cities like Los Angeles, who are deciding not to listen to the governor, essentially. And, you know, one of the officials from the city of LA referred to the governor's move as completely unconscionable. And the Los Angeles County Supervisor is actually empowering their sheriff to deny jailing anyone that's been arrested only for an anti-camping violation. So I think a good display of how cities do have power and they can fight against legislation and decisions by higher levels of government than them. And then lastly, we will share a link in the chat to a letter from Congress that was to President Biden in relation to this Supreme Court decision. And basically they're denouncing the Supreme Court's decision in the case and just really encouraging the Biden administration to focus on evidence-based solutions to homelessness. They highlight some things such as harm reduction and encouraging greater flexibility for the housing choice voucher program. And I will pass to, I believe Ashley has the next slide.
Hi, everybody. This is Ashley from MCAH. I'm just going to hop on really quickly to talk about our Housing Homestretch campaign. So as maybe most of you know, the state, the legislature is back in their district doing some work on a little bit of a break, but they'll have what we call a lame duck session in November and December after the election, which is our last chance to push through any legislation. So we've decided to launch a campaign in partnership with the Rent is Too Damn High Coalition, which is a coalition of all of the tenant unions across the state of Michigan. And so we have a set of 7 legislative priorities, including source of income, which we've talked about, also some eviction protections, rental junk fees, fair chance access to housing for people who've had criminal convictions. And so we want all of you to sign on to our campaign. We'll be sending the sign-on with the list of all of the bills that we're endorsing. So you're welcome to sign on as an organization or an individual. And if you'd like to be involved in this official campaign partner, which would be attending bi-weekly calls for the next few months, doing some legislative engagement with us and promoting this campaign to your network, you're welcome to email me and Lisa, and we can send you more of the materials to become an official partner. And then once again, I'll also say in the second week of November, we'll be hosting a rally with The Rent is Too Damn High. So we'll be sending out more information about that, but keep that in the back of your mind and on your calendar. We would love to see all of you there. And again, all of you are welcome to just sign on as an organization or an individual to the Google form that I'll be sending just to endorse this campaign. And we welcome you to share this with anyone who's interested. As we try to make a final push for some more great legislation at the end of the session. Thanks, everyone. I'll pass it off.
Thanks, Ashley. And I did just want to note too that, you know, Michigan's legislative session goes 2 years, and this is the second year of the session. So anything that doesn't make it with a full vote, and oftentimes committee hearings, has to be reintroduced the next session. So we had so many great bills that were introduced, and we really want to, you know, put a hard push on toward the end of the year. But also we may or may not have a lame duck. It doesn't always happen every time. So, you know, if we need to have a hard push starting this fall, especially since it's an election year. A lot of the sessions are not going to happen. So we have a very small window. So thank you, Ashley. We're excited about this campaign and hope you join with us. Next slide, please. One of the other pieces of legislation that has been introduced, actually last year, had a hearing, has not had a vote, is the Fair Chance Access to Housing, which is the House Bill 4878. Vera, Institute of Justice, and Nation Outside are leading this effort for this legislation that would kind of change the kind of how people apply for housing if they have a criminal history. It advocates for a two-step process so that people can present their best selves and why they should get into housing, and then the landlord doesn't automatically have the right to check on their criminal history, and they don't have to disclose it until other conditions are met. So it's a bill that's very much in line with what's happening nationally and in other states in reducing, you know, barriers to people that have either paid their dues, served their time, or, you know, are on parole or have a low level, you know, misdemeanor and shouldn't really be impacted by their criminal history. So we're really advocating for this one. They're looking for 100 signatures, and I think they're really close. I think they're about 10 away, and this is an organizational sign-on. So no individuals, only organizations. But if you have the authority to sign on for your organization, we really suggest that you do that. I'm also going to ask people, just remind people to mute again. And Janine, do you have a question? You're on mute. You're still on mute. You got it. There you go.
There you go. So, as you all have noticed, I am an advocate for people with disabilities. And I was wondering if some of the bills that you guys are endorsing would help that movement going forward, so to speak.
A lot of the bills are focused around tenant protections, which helps everybody really if they're getting into rental housing. So the source of income definitely applies to people with disabilities because they might be getting SSI or SSDI. And, you know, a lot of people are not in a position to be a homeowner. So these tenant protections focus on people, you know, relationship with landlords and rental housing and the whole process, junk fees, you know, regulating what can and can't be charged. So there's a lot of really important and good legislation that would cover people with disabilities, people of color, people who have historically been left out of certain housing that they might want to have, people with vouchers. So yes, it's and when you get our materials, you can see it's really going to be beneficial for folks if these pass.
No, I've been copying the links as they come up in the chat, and I'm gonna send it to our policy analyst at the DD to
Yep.
see if that we can either A, write a letter, or B, maybe not endorse you guys because we're federally funded, of course, but I personally will endorse you guys.
Well, and you can let people in your networks, know to contact their legislators and advocate for these to be passed. So thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, we're gonna move
I
on.
just,
Oh. Sorry, you got muted again. Did you have another quick question? Because we're gonna,
no, I just want to make sure that I was copying the right information because we are specifically sort of like disability based,
Right.
especially for housing and stuff, and we're going for accessible, adaptable, affordable housing. So that would really help us if we get the tenant regulations in, I think. I don't know, but I will for sure send it to our policy notes right after this because I've been copying the links as they come up. So
Okay, the other thing that you can do, we always send a follow-up in a couple days, and that will have all of the links and all of the information. So that will be available too to forward on. It will be an email that you'll get.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, let's go to the next. So this is another opportunity for advocacy in a different way. So MCAH is holding open public comment period for the month of August till the 27th. That's the 26th, pardon me. They are seeking public comment on their Housing and Community Development Fund allocation plan, which is part of their consolidated plan, and also their citizen participation plan. So they're holding public hearings starting this week in Gaylord on August 6th, August 14th in Grand Rapids, and August 21st in Detroit. And these are in-person public hearings. There's only about a 2-hour window. So if you're interested in participating, you can go, or you can just listen to what other people are saying. If they're making comments, you don't have to speak. You can also send your comments in, an email. You don't have to attend the hearing. And then they also have a virtual public meeting on August 22nd that's being held as well. So you can go on Zoom and participate that way. So there's lots of ways to participate, but we really encourage you to do that because the Housing and Community Development Fund is our state's housing trust fund. And so we are really hoping that a lot of the funds that are allocated go to people at the very lowest incomes. Next slide, please. And just a reminder, these are our policy priorities for 2024. And they're kind of hard to read, but we will also be engaging folks once we get into the fall in doing some discussions around what should our policies be for 2025. So look forward to that and we'll be telling you and emailing you and putting it on social media for lots of opportunities to participate, especially if you attend LAC meetings or you are a MICA member. We'll have some things especially for you. Next slide, please. So here's some ways that you can take action. We've talked about a lot of them. You can go to the next slide, please. During August, this is a great time to engage with your legislator while they're in district. As I mentioned, there's not a lot of legislative meetings that are being held in Lansing. They are either campaigning because a lot of them are, the whole house is up for re-election in our state, as well as other races. And so there's a lot of legislative time in the district. A lot of legislators are holding coffee hours or coffee meetings, whether in person or on Zoom. I attended Senator Bayer's about a week and a half ago. So it's a great way to engage with them. You can get some FaceTime with them and talk about what you feel like they should prioritize, and hopefully some of the bills that we've presented to you today. will be some of the things that you talk to them about. But there's lots of opportunities to participate. You're attending the LAC meeting, that's one of them. We also facilitate a coalition for expanding housing access, which is focused on the source of income protections and other tenant protections. We meet every other week on Thursdays. You're welcome to join that group. If you want, you can email me. Ashley's going to be talking about some of our voter registration and education activities around the election. The primary is tomorrow, so that's a fantastic way to participate as a citizen and get your voice heard, weigh in on your priorities. And then there are also opportunities for Advocacy Day and Hill Day participation throughout the year. So we'd love for you to engage as best you can, whatever ways are convenient for you. Next slide, please. So now a few updates from us, and then we'll be sure we'll have plenty of time to hear from you coming up. Next slide, please. So Ashley, do you want to take this?
Hi again, this one's me. So I just want to talk a little bit about our Homes, Our Votes election work, which is very timely. As Lisa said, there's a primary tomorrow, so be sure you all get out to vote for that. Encourage all of your friends and family to do so as well. But we've been hosting voting registration and education events throughout the summer, and we'll be continuing to do that this fall ahead of the general elections as well. And so we'd love to invite you to partner with us in any way that you'd like. We can come in if you are a direct service provider, if you provide housing, homelessness, social services. We would love to host a voter registration event with you, or we can do a training for your staff to host their own voter registration event. We can do education surrounding special populations like individuals with criminal histories, or how individuals who are experiencing homelessness can vote, voting without an ID or an address. There's a lot of different ways that we can work with folks to make sure that everyone is able to fulfill their right to vote. We can also help host tenant town halls with you and bringing your legislative members to talk to your staff or your residents. And then we have lots of posters, swag, stickers. So if you fill out the survey that we've linked, you can get involved in any of these ways, and we're happy to send you lots of posters and swag too. And we also have a dedicated voting page on our website, so you can register to vote there or learn about different resources and hear from some advocates who've experienced homelessness on why they vote. And last, stay tuned for our state candidate surveys. We'll be getting those out after the primary results come out, but we'll be asking all of our state and federal candidates what they think about homelessness, housing, and a lot of the bills that we're advocating for. So that's just a really nice guide to look at as you consider who to vote for. And that is all for me. Thank you all again.
Yeah, this is more about the primary. You can still register even if you haven't, or vote by going to the clerk's office tomorrow. It's kind of surprising how many people sit this one out and don't vote in the primary. In Michigan, 23% of Michiganders across the state voted in the presidential primary. So that's very low. So, you know, you're sitting it out and letting somebody else make decisions for you. And oftentimes in some districts, the primary decides who wins, because if it's in a very Republican area or a very, very Democratic area, you know, whoever wins the primary usually wins that seat. So it is not one to sit out. They have great importance for, you know, the election in November. Again, you can vote if you're homeless, and if you don't have an ID, you can just sign an affidavit. And if you can help someone else get to the polls, that would be major. So we really appreciate it. 8.3 million Michigan residents are registered to vote. But people who have higher incomes, people who are homeowners, have higher rates of voting. So we really need to make sure that we level the playing field and get people's, you know, opinions and weigh in on what candidate best represents your values by voting. Next slide, please. So we talked about this. Yeah, so ballots in smaller elections are more valuable because there's just, you know, a higher percentage with the less votes there are, less ballots. So yeah, it's our civic duty. It produces change and it helps affirm, you know, your participation in our democracy. Next slide, please. So turning to planning for next year, you can put this on your calendar. Save the date for our next 2025 Homelessness Advocacy Day. It's going to be held on Wednesday, April 9th at Lansing Community College again. That's where we were last year. For next year, we are going to hopefully have a shuttle so that it'll be easier for people to get around and get back. We have a couple rounds of meetings and then lunch and then back. So we'll try to make it easier on folks to get around that capital area. So please put this on your calendar and look forward to more information from us at the top of the calendar year. Next slide, please. So our free training for August is going to be a fabulous one. This is going to be around the topic of Beyond Bake Sales, innovative ways to fund your Homeless Awareness Month activities. So this is going to be presented by a professional fundraiser, Abby Reeg, and it will be held, this is free, it will be held on August 19th at 1 o'clock. That's a Monday in a couple, 2 weeks from now. And we encourage you to attend. It's great timing now as you're planning your Homeless Awareness Month activities for the month of November. So this will give you plenty of time to get those funds that you need to put on an event that you want to hold. Next slide, please. Eric, this is you.
Here I am, like a bad penny. I keep coming back. So thank you, Lisa, and everyone for your coverage of those slides, getting people up to date on the state issues, and then also talking about some of the things happening with our organization. I did want to take an opportunity while we're here to talk about membership. Last month, our organization was focused on some membership appreciation messages that we put out, and this month we're talking about membership recruitment. So I want to just take a moment to remind people that we are a membership organization and that we have membership made up of people like yourself and organizations that you work for. And it's a very important part of who we are and what we do. From the beginning, our organization, approximately 34 years ago, was created by people who decided to roll up their sleeves, get together, and make some things happen to advocate on behalf of people who were doing the work. And so here we are carrying out that mission today. So I want you to think in terms of what value we as an organization bring. And you had a couple of examples there in the last slide with respect to training, something that we do on a regular basis, making sure that you have tools in the toolbox to handle the things that you need to provide the best services for your constituents in your service area. But then also Homeless Awareness Month. We killed two birds with one stone when I talk about that one as well. A Homeless Awareness Month is something that we take on a statewide basis and are very happy to help elevate that and to provide tools and support for you to be able to raise the issue locally, to talk about the issue of homelessness and have an observance that you can point to start those conversations. As an organization, as you know, you're here today because we pursue advocacy. And this is something I really want to lean into because as an organization, we have really dramatically increased the work that we're doing at the state level and at the federal level. That's work that we do when we think in terms of legislation. It's work that we do when we think about the regulatory aspect of advocacy, whether it's HUD or whether it's MSHDA or other funding sources. We want to be a voice for you in the work that's being done. The advocacy work doesn't happen on its own. As you can see, we have more staff. For those of you who were around 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you know that our staff has expanded, and that is what has allowed us to continue this work and to expand the work that we're doing. And we feel like we're really making some progress and getting some traction on some very important issues, such as the source of income discrimination bills. Those are things that probably 5 years ago, we would never thought that we could have gotten this far on. And that's only because of the work that we're doing in bringing you together to be advocates as well. This is not just about us as our staff, but how are we coalescing people? How are we bringing partners together around the state? And so I'm making this plug for membership because we can't do it without you. We certainly are pleased to work on your behalf, but we do need your support through membership as well. So if you have not been a member before as an individual, or if your organization has not been a member, we encourage you to do that now. Again, collective voice, it allows us to have additional funding, but also in a formal way identifies folks who are doing the work on the ground, and collectively we have more power. So I encourage you all to take that action step. We'll be dropping a link in either, I don't know if we have that available in the chat, or whether or not we're going to send it and follow up. Wonderful, thank you. But again, encourage you to take some action on it. If you're not the person within your organization that makes those decisions, I encourage you to have a conversation with the person that is, because without you, we can't continue to do this work. So it's really imperative for us, as we do have this traction, to continue to have additional members come on board and be a part of this solution-making effort. So with that, I'm done with my pitch for membership, but I really do hope to see additional members coming from this group.
Thanks, Eric. I also wanted to note that Allison put in the chat that we are also hosting an interactive in-person training in Ann Arbor on August 26th, that's a Monday, on harm reduction. One of my favorite things to talk about and learn about. So the link is in there if you want to register for that. So thank you, Allison. Wanted to just preview something that we're rolling out our next meeting, and this is our legislative liaison program. So we are going to have what we're calling LAC liaisons that will be representing their COC. They've been designated by their COC, and they will provide updates from their communities at the LAC meeting. We will set aside time for that. And then they will also report back. They will have time at their COC meeting on their agenda to report back things that we're talking about here, legislative updates, congressional updates, any advocacy updates, any public comments, anything going on, training, all that kind of thing, to their COC. And so it gives us kind of a way to have a little bit closer engagement from people around the state and hear what's going on, not only things that we're sharing, but we want to hear from you as well. So we're very excited about this. And I wonder, is there anyone on who is a LAC liaison?
I'm going to give a shout out to Daniel Klink from Community Action. He's based in Jackson. So glad to have you here, Daniel.
Thank you.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, very excited. We'll be rolling that out, but if we'll have time in a minute or two. Yes, Max, you are the Oakland County, so great. Nice to see both of you here. Perfect. Next slide, please. So this is where you come in. We'd love to hear from you. If there are things that you wanted to mention going on, any trends that you're seeing, any new housing, any issues that you're noting in your communities. Janine, see your hand up first.
So I have a couple things. So this is going to be a little bit of a, so the disability community really suffers for housing for many reasons. One, we cannot access the vouchers because they're not widely publicized enough for us to get the vouchers that we need for affordable housing, or let alone that there's a lack of accessible apartments for us to go into. There's only 5% of all apartments that are accessible to us. And it is getting out of control. As Virginia Council, we are looking to upgrade that to 20%. because it is getting out of control. Some of my friends are literally not homeless, but they are literally trying to get help in the housing community, and they can't get the help, or they can't find a place that accepts the Section 8 vouchers because they're full, or the place is not accessible for them to get into. So the lack of accessibility to the programs that are there to help us
Right.
are not there.
Yeah, it is. It's a tremendous problem, as Renee is noting in the chat. And sometimes if you're lucky enough to get a voucher, then you can't find a place that you can physically get into, or a landlord doesn't accept the voucher. So it's, yeah. And we're as a state, you know, I think about 190,000 units shy of what we need in affordable housing for people with the lowest incomes, which often tends to be people with disabilities, seniors, you know, who have unfortunately lower incomes. So yes, it's a huge problem, and some of the bills will help with that. Hopefully, the source of income for sure will.
Lisa,
So
let me
thank
just
you.
add
ahead.
to that. At the federal level, those are the kinds of things that are being brought up by organizations like the National Low Income Housing Coalition. But I just wanted to comment on another subcommittee. I didn't report out on it, but the House Committee on Financial Services has a subcommittee on housing and insurance, and they held a hearing that was relating to housing solutions to cut through government red tape. So there are those who are arguing that there is too much regulation, there are too many requirements that are inhibiting the ability of developers to be able to move forward with projects. There are some counter arguments. So this is creating an opportunity to have a little bit more engagement about it. The counter argument is, well, a lot of those regulatory practices are put in place to protect the people who most need protections. And one of the things that was brought up in that hearing was the idea of the government having a role in paving the way for what's called disability forward housing. Some of you may have heard that. It's not a new term. It's been around for a little while. But that is simply saying, hey, as we're developing housing, we shouldn't be thinking about a kind of a uniform type of housing that can be retrofit later if need be, if there are some issues with respect to disability and access. We should be incorporating this into the plans now so that they're already available for folks. So that is part of that conversation about where it makes sense for us to really lean into accessibility. And again, that terminology of disability forward housing comes into play in this conversation when we think in terms of what someone says is a regulatory barrier may actually be something that could be turned around and used to actually be a regulatory benefit for people who otherwise are not able to access housing. So I just wanted to toss that out there.
Thanks, Eric. Ashley.
Hi, guys. So I'm just curious. I know we touched on this, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, but kind of wanted to see if anyone across the state had more information on what communities in Michigan, if any, are kind of reacting to the Supreme Court decision and taking steps similar to California. I mean, obviously that was the governor decision or governor executive order in California, but if any communities locally where, I mean, we're in talks with our city and county constantly, but they're definitely, I don't know, it's being brought up, right? And so I want to be prepped with other communities who are doing this and taking criminalization a step further and kind of use that as a don't do this example, right? But they keep saying, well, what you know, I keep pointing to California and I'm like, watch this play out, you know, and they're like, well, locally, they want examples locally. And I'm just not sure across the state what's happening.
Yeah, so Hillsdale put forth an ordinance. I want to say it's at least a year ago, if not more, and they ended up not making it quite as strong as they initially wanted to, where it was going to be a fine, and then they negotiated with the COC and advocates and included, I think, a community service in lieu of a fine, but they still have an ordinance, and they've had a homelessness task force for a couple years, studying the homelessness issue, and the task force has been losing people gradually over time. They've had a lot of disagreements about what approach should be taken, and their task force just issued kind of a report, I want to say about a month or two ago, and their conclusion is to use public funding to expand their jail rather than alternatives to criminalization. So that's one example, and we can send out, we actually have the report that we can send, as well as the ordinance from last time. And then other communities, I know Lansing has been having some challenges with unsheltered homelessness and encampments and clearing them, and there's a lot of discussion with the city about what their approach should be. I don't know if there's anything in writing. I know I've just been seeing it come across my news feeds from Lansing. But Rent is Too Damn High is involved. Rep. Diebendorf has been really involved. Oh, thanks, Lauren. She put the Hillsdale report in there. And then Kalamazoo has done some stuff, but they do have, I know it's an equity ordinance, and they've been working a couple years. They have like first responders who are trained to work with folks rather than, criminalize whatever they're doing to live their lives outside. That's all that comes to mind for me right now. And the Grand Rapids ordinance a couple years ago, and they've been doing things around changing their benches to add, armrests and kind of a hostile architecture, although other people are saying it's not. But there's been some things in the state, so we are trying to keep track of everything. So if anybody knows of anything else, but we're putting it in our toolkit. Jamie's working on the toolkit. It's and Lauren and Ashley, it's almost done. So we
Lisa,
can send it out. Yes.
Just wanted to mention the example that you had given about Hillsdale and the language in their report about expanding their jail. That is not exaggeration, folks. I mean, that's literal. So those kinds of things are going to continue to be bubbling up. We'll see that happen. I just wanted to mention, in piggybacking on the toolkit, that as this becomes more and more prevalent as far as an issue across the country, we do have connections with different organizations such as the National Low Income Housing Coalition and other state partners with that organization and the National Alliance to End Homelessness. As new tools are developed to counter the messaging from the Cicero Institute, we will be looking at those things and gathering those things together and strengthening that toolkit. So we will be a resource, hopefully, for you to be proactive in developing some messaging and being prepared for some of these actions that may be taken in the future. But we are monitoring this very closely, and we'll continue to gather information and make sure that folks know what's going on and have the tools.
Yeah, it's yes, it's really heartbreaking, and that public funds are being spent that way. And if criminalization worked, they wouldn't have had it in grants passed by already. They wouldn't have homelessness. So we know that criminalization doesn't work. It only adds more barriers on top of those that unhoused people already experience. And so part of our toolkit is going to be on research and studies that show that, housing is the key. Housing ends homelessness. Homelessness is a housing problem. It's not a crime. All those kind of things. And talking about like Housing Not Handcuffs campaign, some of our national partners. So it's going to have a lot of, things that you can use if you're talking to those public officials to say, look, research has already been done. This is not a response that works. It just, moves people along to another community. And that's what Grants Pass was trying to do. So it doesn't solve the problem for people. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Max?
Hi. So, there was a national guaranteed income conference that was in Detroit over earlier in the summer in June, and one of the things that came from that was somebody from HUD had mentioned this potential pilot program that they're looking at doing that's supplementing vouchers with cash assistance to folks. And that way it kind of overcomes some of the barriers that we've talked about around landlords and their piece. And so I think that I haven't seen anything yet, but maybe folks on the call will keep their eye out around, there's going to be a public comment period that they're going to launch at some point to try to explore this a little bit further, get people's feedback on that. So just putting it on the radar for in the future, if and when that comes, because it would be great to see that at the state level, in addition at the federal level, because we know voucher programs, high demand, low funding. And so whatever we can do to be able to support more flexibility for folks and get cash in hand for people to have use it to how they need it.
Wonderful. And thanks for mentioning that. There's a number of communities in Michigan that are looking at that, and we have a state level. Max has been part of it. Group that's talking. United Way is leading the effort. United Way Southeast Michigan around different cash opportunities that communities have been using to help alleviate poverty. And so, yeah, it's something that kind of Ann Arbor's been doing it, and there are other pilots in Michigan or going to be starting in Michigan. So that's really exciting. So thank you for mentioning. Eric, did you want to comment?
I just wanted to add, it's interesting. I didn't hear anything mentioned about that. There were at the National Alliance to End Homelessness conference sessions with HUD, and that didn't come up specifically, but I'm sure people would have really been listening intently if it had been shared. But I wanted to just comment on what you had said, Lisa, about the fact that there are other communities that are looking at something similar to that in the state, not tied to vouchers specifically, but Flint, and I can't remember what they call it, prescription for something program, but also heard recently that the city of Detroit is now looking at that as well and trying to model something after that. So there is some action taken in some larger communities. And I think that if you can show that there is a benefit to potentially even tying it into things such as vouchers, that you can kind of narrow the scope a little bit and maybe even improve the outcomes that would be seen, because they're having a lot of success, or at this point it's termed a lot of success in Flint. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks. It's called RX Kids in Flint. Thank you. Yeah, let's go to the next slide, because before people drop off, I do want to let you know that next month we are landing on Labor Day. So I don't know about you, but I'm planning on taking the day off. So our next meeting will be September 9th, which is the following Monday. I don't know, Ashley, if you can advance the slide. There we go. Yep. So on the left-hand side there, you can see Monday, same time, same place, just a week later, because everyone hopefully will be enjoying the Labor Day holiday. So we're almost at the top of the hour. I don't know if anyone else has any comments or questions in the last closing moments. I don't see any. If not, you know where to find us. We're everywhere. Amy's been doing a fabulous job posting everything on social media, sending out our newsletter. We're revamping our website and our advocacy page. So thanks to Ashley, Jamie, and Lauren for working on that. And you all have a great rest of the month. Hope to see you out and about. If not, we'll see you here in a month and a week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.